The OPEC announcement to curb oil production was a sharp turn from a 2-year-old policy of pumping without limits, which succeeded in hurting rival suppliers, but also sent prices into freefall. Russia was the first non-OPEC member to welcome the deal, agreeing to also limit its average daily production of just under 11 million barrels. Brent crude surged to 1-year highs on the news. This is a welcome move for oil-producing nations which have struggled under low oil prices.
We have seen too low oil prices can actually destroy demand from countries who suffer deeply from the loss of revenue, and that in itself slows down global growth. And if you look at IMF outlook, the outlook is clearly not as good as it was before.
According to recent reports from both the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development and the IMF, global growth in 2015 was the weakest since the end of the economic crisis in 2008, and the forecasts for next year are not promising. Yet OPEC member Saudi Arabia warned against drastic production cuts that could shock markets. China, which produces around 4.5 million barrels of oil per day, is also concerned about what sudden changes could mean to the global economy.
China is also facing problems as the oil prices drop. But at the same time, China doesn't want oil prices to rise too fast, as it could have some negative impacts on the global economic recovery.
While many oil consumers have been enjoying the cost savings, such as Turkey, which imports roughly 3/4 of its energy needs, a drastic rise in prices could be quite the jolt.
Yet there is also discord within OPEC itself over this deal. Iran and Iraq have refused to attend informal meetings here in Istanbul with OPEC and non-OPEC members, saying they are instead looking to make up for lost revenue from these falling oil prices and will thereby increase production.
Iran wants to increase their oil production to 4 million barrels per day before considering limits, while Iraq and Venezuela disagree with the methods OPEC is using to calculate each member's production quotas. Meanwhile, OPEC members Nigeria and Libya have been exempt from the production caps in the face of security issues which have affected their ability to reach normal production levels. This is all raising concerns about the actual ability of the deal to truly rebalance oil prices.
We really don't yet know what's going to happen. Will there be a real freeze? Will there be a cut in production? Who's ultimately going to agree? Given the global demand situation now, how much difference will it make if 500,000 to 1 million barrels come off the market? Right now, I'm not sure.
OPEC hopes to hammer out all the details needed by the next official meeting in Vienna at the end of next month. Natalie Carney for CCTV in Istanbul, Turkey.
Well, Natalie Carney joins us now from Istanbul with more on that summit. Natalie, we know stakeholders in the African continent met today to discuss the continent's energy needs. What were some of the key things that came out of that discussion?
Well, this final day of the Congress really did focus all on Africa, and it started off quite positively, sort of realizing the great energy potential on the continent, from oil and gas all the way to renewables. The big question that still remains is how to harvest all that potential into sustainable energy. According to the Economic Community of West African States, they say there are robust energy projects happening across the continent, amounting upwards of $100 billion US, which really shows that there is a lot of trust in Africa and in the potential energy that it can provide. Problem again is how come this is not getting to many of the residents of the continent. Access and improving that access was one of the main challenges panelists tried to tackle today. And again, according to the Economic Community of West African States, they sort of gave a perspective. Half of the population of Nigeria, for instance, does not have access to energy, to electricity, I should say. And if you go into rural areas, that drops down to only 8%. But how do we get there? And the suggestions they gave was A, improving security. Unfortunately, instability and terrorism do plague some of the countries on the continent, but so does climate change, droughts and flooding as well. But they did provide a solution there, or a possible solution, about regional integration, and we should focus much more on energy sharing amongst nations, which could really mitigate at least the issues from climate change. As well, financing was another area that they focused a lot on, and how to build up and improve financing and cooperation between the private and public sector. As well, a need for more transparency in policy is another way to entice more investment in that sector.
Unfortunately, Natalie, we have to leave it there. But many thanks for those insights today. Of course, Natalie Carney joining us in Istanbul.